Hey, welcome to Overtime, where we take Sunday's message further. My name is Jeremy, and I'm your host. And this is a podcast where we just want to ask the questions that we think that you would ask as it relates to Sunday's message. And as we do so, we hope that it helps you grow in your life and your faith. With that being said, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all of the podcasts that are coming out. Not only that, hit the like button, because when you do so, it helps us help other people. And if you ever have a question about Sunday's content or about Overtime, you can submit those to overtime@npaustin.com, and we will be sure to get to those in future podcasts. So with that being said, here's a quick recap of Sunday, and then we're going to jump into our conversation today.
Here's what Jesus says next. And lead us not, here's our word, into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. What I'd like to do is begin to explore, what is temptation? He says, when tempted, no one should say God is tempting me. Well, the big difference and the nuance in this Greek word is either external or internal. God allows the parasmus, these external tests, to come our way. It creates some energy in here, and you are free to choose. And it either grows you or it holds you back. It's as simple as when temptation comes our way, just say no. The only way to break the hold of a beautiful object on the soul is to show it an object more beautiful. And that is what Jesus is leading us into. In fact, the entire Jesus way to pray is this path down this way to go, oh my gosh, I've never seen Jesus in this way. Like what God has done for me through Jesus Christ, it is far superior than anything I may be tempted by.
Okay, so you mentioned something, second service, but you did not give all the clarity first service.
Oh.
And this was about a sign that you have on your desk. And you very briefly said the statement, the higher the hair, the closer to God.
Amen.
And what's the story behind the sign, the phrase?
It's nothing fancy.
Give it your best shot.
Would you like me to tell you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Jill and I were on our, 20th anniversary, 19th anniversary, and we were in Fredericksburg just hanging out, staying at a VRBO, and having a great time, and went to one of the wineries up there, which is Grape Creek, and we joined, and we're members. And now we get to go to Georgetown around, the Grape Creek Square and get our free glass of wine, which is awesome.
Nice.
And so, anyways, we're having a great time, and we're going like downtown Fredericksburg, and they have these like shops with all these like little kind of niche products and all this kind of stuff. And so I'm window shopping, and I see like a wooden sign. It's about like 3 inches tall, maybe a foot long, and it was written in cursive, and it says, "The taller the hair, the closer to God." And I went, babe, that's it. We need to do that. So that's one of the only items I've ever bought for my office.
Yeah.
Was that sign. And so I brought it in my office, and everything else I just,
What did the cashier, did he make any sort of like, look at your hair, look at the sign, look at that? Yeah.
Yeah, it just gave like, he gave the look.
He acknowledged like, okay.
Yeah, but it was good. I mean, it was one of those weird tension moments where, sometimes you're like, I should probably lean in and say something. Like, dude, you got tall hair. This sign kind of fits you.
Yeah.
And, but, he didn't choose to say it. And Jill and I were, laughing, having a good time. And so.
I'd want to know the person who made that sign.
I know.
What their hair is like. If it's like you, but on a whole nother level.
My guess is it's somebody from the 80s or 90s with that bunch of, probably a lady with a really tall, like, bangs.
Yep.
And lots of hairspray. It's like back in the day.
Yep.
And so I'm guessing that's, they were thinking, ooh, Texas tall hair.
Oh, yeah.
And so it just happened to apply to me.
Nice. When y'all were in Fredericksburg, did you go in the sauce shop where you go around and you try all the different sauces?
No.
Oh.
No.
I went there recently.
Yeah.
Man, it was awesome.
So good.
I
like
was
hot sauce, like for chips?
Well, so there's
salsa,
there's pickles, there's like dip, like creamy jalapeno, and then there's all these different types of peanut butter, apple peanut butter, chocolate banana peanut butter. There's like cinnamon honey butter, like, and they just have crackers everywhere, and you just go around and you just.
I'm on a diet right now.
Yeah.
And everything you're saying is killing me right now.
I am not sorry. So we went in there for our anniversary recently, and I think I like spent 45 minutes just trying every single one.
You should.
And then there was the hot sauce in the back. I didn't do any of that. They had one called Plutonium that was like locked up in a cabinet with a clear glass.
Yeah.
And it was $250 for a bottle of hot sauce.
What's in there?
I don't know.
Plutonium?
But I guess so. Apparently it's just like insane Scoville or whatever, hot readings, but it's very interesting.
Interesting. Okay.
Yep. Has nothing to do with where we're going in the podcast
Hey,
today.
if I win the lottery, I'll buy you that.
No, there are other things I'd prefer. Yeah, talk to me first once you win the lottery. Yeah. Okay, so we are wrapping up our prayer series with this podcast. This is the last piece of the prayer series. We were in part 5 of 5 this last week, and we've really been breaking down the Lord's Prayer, where the disciples said, "Lord, teach me how to pray," and Jesus responds and he gives the Lord's Prayer, which has been repeated kind of in a religious way for centuries and millennia now. But you went week by week, kind of sentence by sentence, breaking down and giving us a Jesus way to pray. And I want to kind of hit on the 6 different things very briefly, just to kind of recap for people. So the first thing is getting into an intentional time and place. And then Jesus did this all the time. He went away and he got into his own place, his own time, undistracted. Yeah. And then declaring God's greatness. That's where it says, hallowed be your name. So declaring his greatness, starting that way. Spend more time there than you think you should. Surrender your will. The purpose of prayer is not to impose our will, but to surrender our will to God. So surrender your will. Declare your dependence on God. This is that, Lord, give me the daily bread. And then confess and forgive. Lord, forgive me as I forgive others. And so it's confessing our sin. God, I've fallen short. Here's where I've messed up. And then also forgiving other people as well. And then the last piece you ended with today was keep your eyes on Jesus. And that was where Jesus said, lead us not into temptation, deliver us from the evil one. Correct?
Correct.
Cool. I was like,
You're spot
that?
on. You
All
should
right.
have done this series.
Man, I will. Quick story. I was on a wrestling team in high school,
and
I'm the church guy on the team. Like I had been coming to Northpoint, and we're before a meet, and I didn't grow up in church. Before a meet, everybody grabs hands and they all start praying, doing the Lord's Prayer. I didn't know it.
Yeah, you're like, Our Father.
I was
follow.
like, Our Father, thy name, and I just didn't know it at all, and they all knew it, but I was like the church guy in the group, so it was just kind of ironic. It felt like
it is,
but I didn't grow up in church, so I didn't know it.
I'm sorry.
Anyways, okay, so first question. So you talked a lot about temptation and tied this into, it's a little bit of a jump when we go from temptation to keep your eyes on Jesus, but the way you unpack scripture kind of supported why it is that way. It's not so much we're trying to kind of white knuckle our way through temptation, and no, we're not going to we're going to keep our eyes fixed on the person of Jesus, and in doing so, it delivers us from temptation in a way, right?
Short term, long term. I think short term, sure, say no, and that's why at the end I was like, hey, do it, like just say no, fantastic. But it's just not enough. It's like if you're really going to break free from whatever pattern or whatever's got you, temptation, whatever's kind of enticing or seducing you, you've got to look to something greater.
Yeah,
and that greater thing has to be a greater love.
Yeah. And I was curious. This is kind of a question I'm just throwing in here, but
sure.
For somebody who's listening or watching or was there on Sunday and they're going, I wouldn't really say I feel tempted very often. What would you say to that? Because I think that's like a version of it, but there's probably a way to break that down and go, no, we all struggle with this. But what would you say to that?
Talk to your wife. Talk to your mama. Talk to your daddy. No, I really think
I think the temptation language is not really like modern language. What we would say, we would say, "Oh, I'm really struggling with this."
Right. Yeah, that's where I'd say. I mean, I think in first and second service, and I try to reiterate this point a couple times that, regardless if you're a Christian or not, there are things we struggle with. There's like our own standards. Say I'm not a follower of God, and I have my own standard. Like here are things that are going to hurt me and hurt those around me. Well, on a daily basis, you're probably some sort of emotional tug, whatever you want to call that. Like there's this draw to do the very thing that is probably not going to benefit you or your family or your kids or things around you. Like there's this like draw to that, and if you're a Christian, you would call that temptation. There's there's this enticement, there's this seduction to do the very things that are outside God's design or God's creation, and that would be temptation. So I think for all of us, we're there. I think, hey, kudos to you if you've gotten to a place where, man, it feels like that's pretty rare in my life. I mean, kudos. I definitely want to congratulate. And then, I think one of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves is self-awareness. That's why I'd say ask your wife, because I'm sure she'd be like, here's like 7 areas. Or, ask your kids.
Yeah.
There's like, if they're honest and they feel safe around you, they're going to reflect some things that maybe you face more temptation than you think.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's a good response. And I think, we're Christian or not, we would all agree that we have a moral standard that we'd like to hit, and none of us hit it.
Exactly.
Our own or God's or, what the church told us growing up, whatever it might be. We all fall short of even our own moral code. And there's this draw that pulls us away from it, even though we know it could be beneficial to our life. And that's temptation. So, I just wanted to kind of level the playing field.
Yeah, that's great.
So getting into some of the questions on temptation, if somebody feels trapped by temptation or the sin cycle, you could put this even in kind of an addiction lane. I mean, we briefly hit addiction. I mean, that is a whole category in and of itself. What practical steps can somebody take? How can somebody find help? How would you unpack that?
Yeah, there are people far more qualified than me who deal with addictions on an everyday basis that probably would answer this one way. So I'd encourage to read books and listen to blogs, watch YouTube on people who are specialists in this field. I think the way I'd answer that today would be I think the reflection of others is really, really important. The help of others is really important. I remember one time I was struggling in a specific area of my life, and I was having a hard time surrendering it to God. And what I've talked about throughout the series, if you can't surrender, that's as far as you can go in this prayer. And so I was stuck there, and I just kept saying, God, why is this so hard? I just can't, for whatever reason, overcome this. It feels like this is a battle, over and over and over. And, I said, God will be faithful. If you bring it to him and say, God, I want to surrender, I just don't know how or what does that look like, I promise he'll be faithful and he'll tell you. And what I continued to experience with God is he was saying, you need to tell someone. You need to tell someone. This is hidden. The reason why you can't break the cycles because you're the only one who knows. Of course, I know because I'm God, but, you need to tell someone. Tell someone who perhaps is not impressed with you. Tell someone who can, maybe reflect things to you. Tell someone that you're like, oh, this is going to be hard. And that's a real battle. But that was perhaps one of the first steps is to go, hey, someone else has got to know outside of myself to begin to break, the grip, break the temptation, break the cycle of things I'm telling myself to justify because we want to self-justify or I want to self-justify.
Yeah.
So, sitting down with somebody I think is really important.
And it's good to acknowledge on that, that creates a lot of instability in one's life, but it is a short-term instability that you're trading for a long-term intimacy, self-awareness, connection that you can't have when you're kind of have that foggy lens on, know, when you're stuck in that addiction and you're doing it by yourself.
100%. Yeah, because if you're stuck, sometimes you need new information and you're not the one to provide the new information. So it's the person on the other side of you to provide the new information to help you get unstuck. And that's what Solomon said, in Ecclesiastes chapter 4. He says, 2 are better than 1. Well, why? Well, because when one falls down, the other can help them up. It's the idea to go, I don't know how to get up. I am stuck in this place. I need new information. And so I would highly encourage somebody to sit down with a trusted, mentor, potentially a pastor, potentially even a counselor to go, hey, I want to say this is true. And I'm just telling you to admit what you're stuck with, to admit what you struggle with can be, it can feel monumental. It can feel so embarrassing. It can feel like that's the last thing I'll ever confess in my life. But it's your way towards freedom. And that's, sitting down with somebody who can say, hey, I've heard that before. Hey, you're not alone. Hey, there is some hope here. There is a way forward. Here's some steps and stages. I'll walk with you. I think that's a really critical piece. And then I also, I've been to AA. I spent lots of time in AA. And the 12 steps are fantastic. I think, just thinking about this question, I pulled up the 12 steps and, I would encourage somebody to go online. You can search Google, just go through those 12 steps. It's pretty amazing how aligned they are with what Jesus invited us to pray. And it's pretty amazing to get that new information to go, wow, AA has been around a long time. It has really helped a lot of people take some steps towards freedom in an area maybe they're stuck or addicted. And so I would strongly encourage just to look those steps up and, potentially even find groups like that can help you, encourage you, that you're not alone. And that when you do say, hey, my name is, and I am, here's what I struggle with, that you're not alone, that people go, hey, I see you and I'm for you. And, let's together go to a better place. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I love that statement. I don't know if it's Brene Brown that says it or if she's quoting somebody who's quoting somebody. I don't know, but it's
sure.
It's the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard that used a lot. And definitely, I mean, this is not doing service to this question. I mean, we are in just a few minutes unpacking what are potential lifetime traumatic events that have led to potential, lifetime addictions, and there's so many complex layers to this. But yeah, I would say if anything, if nobody's taken that step just to be on the other side of another individual, that's definitely where to start.
100%. Yeah, I think it's an iceberg question. Like you said, there's lots of stuff below the surface. But I think to gain some traction, I just think it's fantastic. That connection piece is required,
and to be prepared maybe a little bit too, because I've heard you say a lot. You need to go backwards sometimes in order to go forwards.
Yeah,
and sitting on the other side of someone is probably going to, in relation to this addiction piece, probably one of the biggest steps you're going to do is go backwards in order to go forwards.
Sure.
To just kind of dissect the problem and what's been going on and where did it stem from and what are the symptoms or versus what's the root cause and, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the aha moments give you a lot of encouragement, a lot of inspiration. And then you can't, it's really difficult to generate the aha moment by myself. And, one of the lies of addiction and the sin cycle is you're alone. So, breaking the strongholds of that kind of lie, that you're not alone, and then having an aha moment to go, I had no idea that's where it came from. I've shared several aha moments. I remember, 10, 11, 12 years old when I said it's not safe to feel. And then I made the vow to myself, which I had to break the vow when I was, 38 years old. So think about that. That's 20 plus years that I said, I will never feel again. I'll never feel again. So imagine Jill, my wife, on the other side of me with a vow I made because of a lot of things that I experienced on the other side of my mom that I'll never feel again.
Yeah.
And I had no idea I made that vow. I didn't have that epiphany. I didn't have the tools when I was 12. But I lived 20 plus years of my life feeling pretty numb and thinking that strength as a man. And it served me well in really hard situations to where I could make great decisions in hard situations because I felt nothing. And but it did far more damage relationally to my sons and to my wife and to my relationships and friendships because of something I did in the past. And it was that epiphany moment via connection with my spiritual director, my counselor, who was able to connect the dots and say, hey, let me go backwards because it's actually your way forward. And that epiphany and that connection actually freed me from something that I had been habitually connected to for so long in my life and allowed me to feel far more alive than I've ever felt in my life. So that's one example to many, many examples in my life. And if you're listening or watching and you've experienced some freedom, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So.
Yeah. One of my mentors said to me once when Ashley and I were kind of dealing with some stuff, and it was kind of like, just keep going through the waters, and they're knee high and it's muddy but you just got to keep going, and otherwise you're going to get stuck and it's not going to be fun. He just said, hey, just keep your eyes on the horizon. You know what I mean? It's just a lot of times we get stuck in here and we stop looking. It's like you're flying a plane and the direction you're going is the horizon. You know what I mean? And it might get bumpy and turbulent, but keep your eyes on the horizon. And that was helpful to me, and I think it's helpful just in any hardship when you're diving into something as complex as addiction. Yeah, there is a freedom, there is a peace available on the other side of a hard battle, but it's worth the battle.
100%.
Yeah. So this next question is a reference to 1 Corinthians 10:13, where it talks about different how God doesn't push us to where we're not tempted beyond what we can bear. Does God really only allow us to be tempted within the limits he knows we can bear? So does this mean he's given us what we need to overcome temptation, Unpack that a little bit, just that verse and how that relates to this conversation.
Yeah, so this is a verse that I'm currently working on. So this is kind of a fun question with my boys.
Okay.
And so like when I'm driving Jonathan or Michael to school, I'm like, boys, what's the Halloween verse? And they're like, and they know this because it's like, maybe I don't know if I have dyslexia, but sometimes I think I do because I reverse things and, I see things differently. But the Halloween verse is 1 Corinthians 10:13, and it's actually not 13, but we think 31. And so that's how they try to memorize it.
I see.
There you go. So that makes no sense.
I was like, wait, how is this temptation verse tied to Halloween at all?
That's right. Ghosts and goblins, temptation.
Yeah.
No, so that's like the reference, chapter and verse and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But then the verse is like, hey, no temptation has seized you except what's common to man, like what's common to all of us. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can stand up under it. So what Paul is teaching us here is the whole idea, yes, he will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. Yes, it will not be overwhelming. Yes, there is a way out. And so, in terms of, like, is God gonna, put a burden on you that, or put something upon you that's far too heavy that you're gonna crumble under? I would say emotionally it can feel like it, but what's true and objective and what we can hold on to is He has provided a way. And I think one of the things we like to do is we like to flirt with sin. We like to flirt with temptation. It kind of makes us feel good. A little bit what I said on Sunday. Hey, when I'm feeling bad, when something's happened in my life, either at work or financially or relationally, and now I'm like, gosh, I just feel stressed. I feel pressure. I feel, underwater. I feel like I can't breathe. I feel like I want some relief. I feel like I want to be seen. I feel like I want somebody to know how hard I work, or I want somebody to see me in a different. Now I'm susceptible. Mm-hmm. And when I'm susceptible, temptation's going to come my way. And as I talked about on Sunday, it's like it's a seduction, it's a lust, it's a fatal attraction. And so there's all kinds of things that are going to come my way that are going to float in my mind to go like, maybe I should do this. Maybe I should give into that. Maybe I should do one more of those. It's like these kind of things start coming my way. Mm-hmm. And it's in that moment Paul speaks in and says, let me remind you of what's true. That's common. Like every man's going to face that. Every woman's going to face that. And here's the thing you need to be doing is looking for a way out. And are you looking for a way out, or are you looking to flirt? Are you looking to flee, like run? Like in the Bible, I joke with my boys sometimes, and this is such a pastor move, but I'm like, kick your heels like a donkey and run. And that's like from the Old Testament, like, get the heck out of there.
Yeah.
Like, and by the way, you'll know it. And I'm just telling you, the awareness of this verse and my hope with my boys is that whenever temptation comes their way, they can see it. And they'll know it. And they'll know that moment, and they'll know the moment of enticement, seduction. And it really does look like two paths in their mind. It's going to be like, there it is. Like God provided an opportunity. There's a prompting for me to leave. There's a prompting for me to do something different. Or I can stay, and I can flirt. See how close to the edge. Make that statement, how close to sin can I get without actually sinning? Well, now you're flirting. And so God is faithful every time. God will, if you're looking for it, you're going to see it. And God is going to give you the strength through community, through connection. God's going to give you the strength through the very Spirit of God who lives in you to actually do something different and to feel the sense of freedom on the other side of that temptation, to feel the sense of empowerment. Like, man, that came my way, but I didn't give in today because I looked for the way out. I felt the very strength of God, and I went a different direction. And that's a really cool thing. And I think the more times you say no, it really does kind of build like this muscle. And the ability to go, hey, God the burden's not too heavy. I was tricked into thinking it was too heavy. I felt like it was too heavy, but objectively, the truth is, because I've been able to exercise that muscle, it's not too heavy, and that God is faithful.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. It's a really helpful verse, too, probably just to memorize for people.
That's a great one.
Yeah, if people are dealing with addiction or something like that, it's a good one to kind of just be able to write on your mind, your heart.
Yeah.
Pull up whenever.
Yeah, and it's so cool because, Matthew 5:8 is a verse that, talks about the pure in heart will see God clearly. And so, like, part of the context of that is a little bit, the more that you exercise the muscle of no, the more like, hey, don't do what you've always done. And I know this is super pragmatic, so there's layers to this, and I get it. But the more that you can exercise that muscle and go, I've done something different than I typically do. I actually got up and I left. I actually, didn't open that thing. I actually, went in a different direction. I actually, whatever it is. The more you exercise that, you do see the world clear. you do see your life in a different way. You begin to see God in a much more broad context, in a much more relational, rich way, because you see he gave you the strength and he provided a way out, and you saw it for the first time and you exercised that muscle and you went that direction. And it's like, man, I am seeing God and I'm seeing my life and I'm seeing the life around me and I'm seeing that temptation. I'm seeing it as it is a lust. It is a fatal attraction. And I'm seeing that for the first time. And all of that is part of the incentive to say yes and exercise the muscle, because the more you can, the more you see. And the more you see, it empowers you a little bit more to continue to do that very thing.
Yeah.
So,
yep. And it's that verse, I think Jesus said it, the pure in heart will see God clearly.
mm-hmm.
You know, the more your kind of vision starts to clear up, I mean, you're pure in heart. You start to see God more clearly, and I think you see the whole addiction and the whole cycle way more clearly than you could in the midst of it.
Well, you hear anybody on the other side, I would say, I mean, it's a strong statement to say everyone, you know, or always, those kind of statements. But I have yet to come across an addict who has broken free from the addiction, who would say of when they were in the addiction that they couldn't see. Mm. Like that's the way they talk about it.
Yeah.
Like I sat down with a lady not too long ago, and she was just talking about from 18 to 45 years old, she was in certain kind of relationships, and she talked about, and they were just at the end of the day not beneficial. They were hurtful, and she just said, I couldn't see it at the time, and today it feels like I can see. And that's the way she described it, and that's a lot of the times the way you hear it.
Yeah. And
that's part of this whole series on prayer. I've said, man, I want people to see. Mm-hmm. I really want people to experience God in a deeper and richer way.
Yeah, yeah. So towards the end, this gets to taking temptation into the fix your eyes on Jesus place. But you had this amazing quote that said, the only way to break the hold of a beautiful object on the soul is to show it an object more beautiful, mm-hmm. which is amazing and also difficult, because I think the question is, what if we can't see or understand the something more beautiful that Jesus offers us? Mm-hmm. And what exactly is that?
Mm-hmm. What is that we can't see?
Yeah, what is the something more beautiful that Jesus offers us?
Yeah,
because it's hard, because we're trading. It's instant gratification. It's I'm looking at what's now versus later, and how do I see that?
Yeah, so this will circle back to question one. I think there's a lot of ways to see what God offers. I do think one of the things that is critical here is, again, going back to community connection. So I'd give an example this way. I would say, I can't see what it's like to fully be a parent, but I can talk to you because you're a parent, and I can ask you, like, tell me what you see. You're up there ahead of me. Like, how is it being a dad? Giving little Grace in the bath and seeing his little arms wiggle around and seeing his little cute, squeaks and squabbles and drool, because he's drooling now.
Yeah, he is.
And, like, what does that feel like? And you're going to the best of your ability, try to articulate that. But you're going to say, Buck, you can never fully experience it until you actually take steps towards that. Like, get married and have a kid.
Yeah.
But you can describe it. You can help me see through that connection. Same thing, like, my buddy Barry, he works out all the time, and I'm guessing, I don't know, I imagine he looks in the mirror and he's like, I like what I see. And I'm picturing him saying it that way too.
Yeah.
Like, I'm all, strong and, feels healthy and feels like energy. Well, maybe I don't feel that way and I can't see that. So then I talk to him and I go, hey, tell me about that. What does that feel like to look in the mirror and, like, be happy? What does that feel like to look in the mirror and, like, be satisfied and go, like, man, I feel energy and I feel like I love what I see, and there's some exhilaration in that. I mean, that's what I would imagine. And he begins to articulate that experience. He begins to articulate what he sees and what he feels and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, wow. And then he looks at me and he's like, but you got to take some steps and move towards that. Like, you can do something different to see something different. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that illustration plays itself out financially. That illustration plays itself out in marriage, that, relationships. You can pick whatever. And so the point with that is, I think if you sit down with somebody who knows God, who genuinely knows him, which means the spiritual disciplines of life are like breathing. You don't think about breathing. You don't practice breathing. You don't have to set alarms to breathe. Like, I must breathe this morning, between this time and this time so I can actually experience life. You breathe.
Yeah.
In the same way, spiritual disciplines, opening the scriptures, praying, fasting, inviting God into, you don't forget that. You just do it because you know him. And when you begin to talk to somebody who's in that arena of life and that kind of depth of relationship with God, they talk about a contentment. They talk about joy. They talk about a peace that truly does transcend all circumstances that happen. They talk about this interesting junction of the tragedies and hardships and difficulties in humanity of life being met and satisfied with the peace and the joy and the contentment and the perspective and the wisdom of God. Mm-hmm. They talk about just this in life, just a contentment, the gratefulness they have. They talk about in terms of eternity, and they keep that perspective and know that we get so caught up in the finite aspects of this life and think this world is all there is and I must build my kingdom here. Well, they have such incredible perspective of the world to come, and that's what Jesus kept teaching us about and said, this is not your home. You're simply an ambassador. There's a world to come. Prioritize my kingdom, seek my kingdom first. And that's real to them. That's not a religious statement. That's not a duty. That's not a discipline. That's their life. Yeah. And you begin to talk about somebody with someone who knows God that way, and the freedom and the beauty of Christ and his willingness to do what he's done so you could actually experience, you could know you have meaning and purpose. That's a statement I say all the time from States. I know I've got meaning and purpose and significance. I know that I have worth and value. I know that I'm made in the image of God. I know that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I can feel like preacher talk, and I get that. But what if that was actually holistically true through and through of you every single day, and that was part of the fabric of your soul, and you knew it? Mm-hmm. How would that change your confidence? How would that change your empowerment? How would that change your perspective on life? Well, there are people who experience this, like breathing. It's not a duty. It's not an obligation. It's not religious. It's they know God. And I would suggest they have great perspectives, and to speak with them and to say, hey, whatever I'm facing today, I have to find something more beautiful. So being connected with somebody who has seen something more beautiful, just like somebody who may experience something different in life, can give you that perspective, can go man, I want that in my life. I desire that in my life, that kind of peace, that kind of identity that's so dang secure that I'm not searching for it, that kind of confidence in my Heavenly Father to know that my eternity is secure and that I am known and loved. I want that. Now, you got to take some steps towards that, because we may want whatever that is. Now that we have clarity because we have connection, now we've got to take steps. And so this whole series has been a series of steps to go, I so want people to taste it. I want them to experience God in a new way. I want them to know how to answer the question, what is more beautiful than that temptation that's trying to seduce me? Because you got to remember that, because it is far more beautiful than whatever this thing promises. Well, if you're going to taste that, then I think you got to take some steps towards that. And one of the steps towards that is to pray in a different way that Jesus invited us to pray.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I could say anything more different, better than all that to wrap up the series.
Okay.
And so I think that was great. What would be any resources that you'd point people towards?
Yeah, I think, go back and listen to the series. If you didn't get all the parts, I've said that every week, because there's so much more context to, if you just like what you read at the beginning and, start with picking a time and a place, start with Father and why that's so important. Tim Keller, I think, has a great book on this. And I think if you just search Tim Keller in prayer, I would encourage people to read Tim Keller's resource on that. And then my biggest encouragement, and this is going to feel so pragmatic, I just don't know any other way. It's one of the greatest pieces of advice and one of the greatest resources is just do it. Just absolutely do it. I've been telling our staff and our leadership team, and you've been in those, I'm like, okay, if you don't pray this way, guys, do it. This is pray all the ways you've been praying. But this is something so core that if you're willing to do it on a daily basis and pick the time and the place and open your palms, posture of being able to receive, and really sit before your Heavenly Father and address Him as a dad, address Him as a father, and declare His goodness and declare His character and declare what He has done in your life and what He's promised. It puts you in a posture that I just cannot describe in such a way outside of saying you've got to do it to experience it. So my greatest resource is do it for 21 days. Muscle memory, 21 to 28 days. Just do it and see what the Lord has for you. And I think He's got something pretty beautiful.
Yeah, for sure. And I would just add on there, if anybody is in the temptation lane, just looking for more resources too. One of the best one, and like, what does it look like to fix your eyes on Jesus, and continue to unpack that. One of the best series I've ever heard personally is by Andy Stanley. It's called Free, and I just looked it up. They have that on their website forever. They built those websites.
And their websites.
It's called wecanbefree.org.
Okay.
Is what it is. And you can watch the whole series, and fantastic series for someone who's just trying to break through a habit or addiction or something like that.
Yeah. And, at the end of the day, when it comes to addiction, I would say just call our church. Just call. We've got several individuals on here who can hear your story, get the context, and then give you some fantastic resources, from books to podcasts to counselors to pastors.
Yep. Awesome. Well, Buck, thank you being on the podcast again, as
Absolutely.
always. And we're done with the prayer series, but we are continuing. We're going to be doing a one-off message this coming Sunday, called Rest Less. Rest less.
I like it.
Because we all want more rest, but our lives feel restless. I was trying to figure out how to make all that succinct.
It's very sneaky how you did that.
Yep. So one-off message this week, and PJ Day for kids. It's gonna be pretty fun.
Awesome.
See you then.
Thank you.